Have you ever wondered why a man's obsession so often feels like both a cage and a crown? His gaze, once flattering, begins to burn into her as though she were a mirror he could never stop staring into. For him, she becomes less a person than a projection of his hidden hunger, the anima his unconscious aches to reclaim. And for her, this obsession is a test. It is the shadow at her doorstep, the pressure that forces her to ask, will I bend beneath his need, or will I transmute it into my own power? Carl Jung warned that what we reject in ourselves, we inevitably cast upon others. A man who cannot face his emptiness will seek a woman to hold it for him. His obsession, then, is not about her. It is about his war with himself. Yet, this is where her strength is born. For if she learns to see his fixation not as a crown to wear, but as a mirror reflecting his wounds, she no longer becomes consumed by it. She rises above it. She reclaims her image from the prison of his desire. In this ancient dance of projection, most women are taught to shrink. They are told to be grateful for attention, even when that attention is suffocating. They are told that obsession is proof of love, when in truth, it is often proof of fear, insecurity, and possession. But some women, rare, luminous, unyielding, understand differently. They recognize that his obsession is not fuel for their ego, but raw energy that can be redirected inward. Instead of becoming a hostage, she becomes the alchemist. Think of the mythic feminine, the goddess who does not flinch at the storm of longing, who does not confuse hunger with devotion. When a man obsesses, he is kneeling at an altar he does not understand. And the empowered woman knows this altar belongs to her spirit, not to his control. She does not need to rage against his obsession, nor does she need to submit. She stands still, centered, letting his fire burn itself out against the fortress of her selfhood. Do you feel it? That subtle shift? The moment when a woman realizes she does not need to perform to keep his eyes on her? That she is not here to soothe his restless soul or validate his fragile ego? She knows his obsession is his crucible, not hers. And so she detaches, not with cruelty, but with clarity. In that detachment lies her strength, because the one who is not dependent is the one who holds the power. Jung would call this individuation the process of stepping out of another's projections to live authentically from the center of one's being. When she sees herself not through his eyes, but through her own, she steps into her full archetypal force. She becomes the sovereign, the wise woman, the lover who is not consumed by the flames of another's desire. His obsession may still swirl around her, but it no longer dictates her movements. She is free within it. This freedom unsettles him, because obsession feeds on compliance. A man whose fixation is met with surrender feels powerful, but when his fixation is met with calm indifference, he is forced to face the hollowness beneath it. She is not rejecting him. She is rejecting the illusion that her worth is measured by how much of her life he demands. This is her act of quiet rebellion, the refusal to be defined by someone else's hunger. And this is where the paradox emerges. The less she needs his attention, the more powerful her presence becomes. The more she withdraws from the role of object, the more magnetic she appears. Not because she plays games, but because her autonomy shines like fire in a darkened room. Men may obsess, but a woman who has claimed her sovereignty does not get lost in their labyrinth. She builds her own temple, and in that temple, she is untouchable. If you listen closely, you will feel the resonance of this truth in your own life. How many times have you confused his obsession with love? How many times have you mistaken possession for devotion? You are not meant to be an echo of his unconscious. You are meant to be whole, indivisible, unshaken. His obsession is not your burden, it is his mirror. And when you learn to see it that way, you step into a rare, intoxicating kind of power. The kind of power that does not need to be proven, because it already exists. This is where the story begins. With a woman no longer hypnotized by the intensity of his gaze, but awake, lucid, radiant in her own being. She has turned his obsession into her fuel, his hunger into her boundary, his fixation into her liberation. The moment she refused to be consumed, the air around her shifted. His fixation, once intoxicating and suffocating, no longer found purchase in her. For obsession can only live where it is fed. and she had withdrawn her flame from his altar. What remains when a woman no longer plays the role assigned to her? What remains is his confrontation with emptiness and her confrontation with sovereignty. A man caught in obsession is often a man unwilling to meet his own shadow. He projects the lost feminine inside himself onto her, making her the carrier of what he cannot face. Jung understood this dynamic. The anima, the inner feminine of a man, when repressed or unintegrated, is forced outward. He does not love her for who she is. He clings to her as a vessel of what he has not awakened within himself. That is why his desire turns frantic, why his eyes become restless. It is not her he fears losing, but the fragment of his soul he has lodged inside her image. Yet here lies the quiet revolution. When she ceases to validate his projection, she compels him to face what he has avoided. Her refusal to bend does not destroy him, it forces him toward growth or collapse. And in both outcomes, she remains untouched, because she has detached from the illusion that his obsession is proof of her value. Most women are taught to equate intensity with significance. They are told that the one who cannot stop thinking about them must truly love them. But intensity is not the same as intimacy. Obsession is not the same as devotion. Obsession is hunger without wisdom, fire without direction, craving without compassion. To confuse it for love is to bind oneself to a storm that cannot sustain. Notice how her stillness unsettles him. When he presses closer, demanding signs of reciprocity, she does not resist with anger. Anger would still tether her to his fixation. Instead, she becomes the mountain, unmoving, calm, a presence too vast to be possessed. This is not a performance of indifference, but the natural expression of inner wholeness. For the woman who has touched her own depth does not fear being alone. She does not need the fever of another's desire to remind her that she exists. And you, listening now, how often have you mistaken the turbulence of obsession for the security of love? How often have you given yourself away because his need felt flattering, because his pursuit seemed proof of your worth? The truth is harsh but liberating. His obsession is about him, not about you. The moment you understand this, you step outside the game. You stop being the object of his projection and start being the subject of your own story. This shift is the essence of individuation. In Jungian thought, individuation is the process of becoming whole by integrating what was once fragmented or hidden. For a woman, this means recognizing the places where her worth has been outsourced to men's attention, to society's validation, to the illusion that to be desired is to be valuable. She takes back the projections cast upon her, and in doing so, she becomes sovereign. Think of the Stoics, who warned against tethering one's peace to what lies outside one's control. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If she allows his obsession to color her sense of self, she becomes tinted with his chaos. But when she guards her mind, when she reclaims her inner stillness, she becomes untouchable. His storm may rage, but her essence remains clear, luminous, uncorrupted. The irony is sharp. When she stops giving herself away, he feels her power more acutely. The less she needs his gaze, the more radiant she becomes in it. She does not manipulate, she does not scheme, she simply refuses to abandon herself. And in that refusal, she embodies the archetype of the awakened feminine, not a muse to be worshipped, but a sovereign force who can never be owned. For him, this realization is unbearable. To love her now requires surrender not of his control over her, but of his illusions within himself. He must face his shadow, his emptiness, his anima. Few men dare this path, for it requires dismantling the ego's fortress. But for her, it matters little whether he rises or falls. Her liberation no longer depends on his transformation. She has already stepped into her own. The deeper she stands in her sovereignty, the more his obsession reveals itself as fragility rather than power. He once believed his relentless pursuit was dominance, that his desire proved he held control. But obsession is not strength, it is dependency, a desperate grasping at what cannot be possessed. And in her presence, his dependency becomes undeniable. She is not diminished by his longing. He is exposed by it. For the woman who has awakened knows this truth. What another projects onto her is not hers to carry. His passion, his fantasy, his hunger, these belong to him alone. She may receive them as reflections, but she does not absorb them as identity. Jung would call this boundary an act of psychic hygiene, the refusal to live under the weight of another's unconscious. She does not take in his shadow. She holds her own light. It is here that she transforms the dynamic. Instead of being the object of his fixation, she becomes the mirror of his inner work. His obsession turns inward, whether he wants it or not. He must either integrate what he has placed upon her, or he will collapse under the burden of his own unmet soul. And while he wrestles with his inner chaos, she moves freely, radiant, and untouched. To the untrained eye, this seems cold. How can she not respond to such devotion? How can she let him drown in his longing? But you must see clearly, obsession is not devotion. Obsession is the ego's refusal to face itself. To indulge it would be to enable his denial. Her silence, her detachment, is not cruelty. It is the most profound act of truth. It says, "What you seek in me is what you must find within yourself." You, hearing this now, know the temptation well. The urge to soften, to console, to let his obsession validate your worth. How many times have you felt powerful because a man could not stop thinking about you? Yet what kind of power is it if it depends on his inability to be whole without you? That is not true power. That is a counterfeit, one that binds you to his hunger instead of liberating you into your own sovereignty. Real power is quiet. It does not need to flaunt itself or feed on another's desperation. It is the power of the woman who sits comfortably in solitude, who does not measure her radiance by the attention she commands. She knows attention comes and goes, but essence remains. She is not afraid of being unseen because she has seen herself. This is what terrifies him most. She is no longer defined by his gaze. The Stoics spoke of ataraxia, a deep, imperturbable peace. Imagine her now, embodying that state. His words grow fevered, his pursuit intensifies, yet her core remains unshaken. Like Seneca wrote, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." His obsession is misfortune disguised as passion. Her detachment is prosperity disguised as simplicity. She knows the game and refuses to play. In this stillness, she discovers a profound reversal. What once threatened to consume her becomes her source of power. His obsession no longer feels like chains, but like proof of her inner magnetism. Magnetism she does not weaponize, but integrates. It is not his fixation that makes her powerful. It is her ability to remain whole in the face of it. Obsession becomes her crucible, refining her boundaries, sharpening her clarity, deepening her sense of self. She does not need to resist him violently, nor does she need to invite him in. She merely embodies her truth so fully that his obsession loses its grip. His energy cannot dominate her because it cannot find an opening in her solidity. Like water pressing against stone, it eventually wears itself out, while she remains. And in that endurance, she realizes something few dare to grasp. The greatest form of influence is not control over another, but mastery over the self. This mastery is magnetic beyond measure. Men may be drawn to beauty, but they are transformed by presence. And her presence, calm, sovereign, untouchable, is a force that no obsession can consume. For she is no longer the hunted, nor the object. She's the architect of her own narrative. And from this place, even his obsession, once a prison, becomes evidence of her liberation. His obsession, left unmet, begins to unravel him. What he once mistook for love now corrodes, revealing its true form, fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of insignificance, fear of facing the void within himself. For when she ceases to carry the anima he has cast upon her, he is left staring into the emptiness he long avoided. An emptiness, when confronted, feels like death to the ego. This is why obsession so often curdles into rage, or collapses into despair. A man who cannot integrate his shadow will externalize his suffering, blaming her for the torment that in truth belongs to him. Yet, in this moment, she is tested. Does she absorb his chaos? Does she bend to his storm to keep the peace? Or does she remain the calm center, refusing to be pulled into the spiral? Her choice defines her power. A woman who has embraced her individuation understands this dance for what it is: projection seeking a host. She sees the desperation behind the intensity, the wounded boy behind the obsessive man. And though she may feel compassion, she does not confuse compassion with sacrifice. For true compassion does not mean surrendering oneself as a container for another's unfinished work. It means standing firm in one's truth, even when another cannot bear it. You have seen this before, haven't you? A man pleading, promising, burning with desire, and yet something in his eyes tells the deeper story. He does not see you. He sees only the fragment of himself reflected in your form. And you, intoxicated for a moment, feel the pull to give in, to let his longing define you, to feel chosen, indispensable. But when the haze clears, you recognize it. Obsession is not love, and being chosen by desperation is no honor. The great irony is that when she withholds herself from his possession, she forces him toward his own potential for transformation. For Jung taught that the shadow, when denied, will stalk us from the outside. Only when faced directly does it become integrated. By refusing to be consumed, she forces him if he is willing to look inward. She becomes not his salvation, but the catalyst for his awakening. Yet whether he awakens or not is irrelevant to her liberation. This is the turning point. She no longer ties her worth to his evolution. She does not live in hope that he will become the man she needs. She has already become the woman she needs. She has stopped waiting. She has stopped bargaining with destiny. And in this independence, her magnetism deepens beyond anything obsession could create. Imagine her now, luminous, steady, untouchable. His words, once binding, now sound hollow in her ears. His promises of forever, his declarations of need, they no longer stir her heart because she has found something greater than his attention. She has found herself. And in finding herself, she realizes she is not a vessel for his anima, nor a canvas for his projections, nor a trophy for his ego. She is her own origin, her own axis, her own mythic center. The Stoics remind us, no man is free who is not master of himself. And by extension, no woman is sovereign who is not free from the chains of external validation. Her sovereignty is not a wall, but a flame, a light that reveals the truth of her being. In that light, his obsession shrinks into its proper size, a symptom, not a destiny. She sees it for what it is, and because she sees clearly, she is no longer ensnared. And can you feel the resonance of this? The subtle but unshakable realization that you are not meant to be the stage for someone else's unresolved drama, that your worth is not determined by how relentlessly someone chases you, but by how deeply you have claimed yourself. The moment you understand this, you step into a freedom that no obsession can touch. You turn what was meant to consume you into the very fire that forges your strength. She has done exactly that. She has walked through the storm without losing her ground. And on the other side, she discovers a truth that will guide her forever. The obsession of another can never define her. Only the clarity of her own soul can. The silence she chooses is not absence, but presence. Not withdrawal, but expansion. In that silence, she claims the vast territory of her own being. His obsession, frantic and noisy, crashes like waves against a cliff that does not move. And as time wears on, it becomes clear. He is the one dissolving against her stillness, while she grows more luminous in the quiet. A woman who refuses to be consumed begins to radiate in ways she never could when trapped in the performance of pleasing. Her eyes sharpen with clarity, her voice carries authority, her very posture speaks of sovereignty. She no longer asks, "Am I enough for him?" She asks instead, "Is he enough for himself?" For the real measure of a man is not how desperately he desires a woman, but how deeply he has faced his own emptiness without demanding she fill it. And here, her power takes on a paradoxical beauty. The more she steps back from the chaos of his projection, the more he feels her gravity. It is not manipulation, it is the law of nature. A soul that stands whole unto itself exerts a force stronger than obsession. It is magnetism, born not from need, but from wholeness. And he, still fragmented, is drawn even more fiercely, though he does not understand why. This is the alchemy of the feminine. When she ceases to be hostage, she transforms hunger into boundary, desire into mirror, obsession into fuel. His fixation, which once threatened to consume her, now becomes evidence of the sacred distance she has created. A distance that protects her essence and forces him into the crucible of his own becoming. Whether he rises in that fire or collapses into ash is not her responsibility. She has released herself from that burden. And you, listening closely, must feel the lesson pressing into your own heart. How many times have you mistaken possession for devotion? How many times have you bartered your freedom for the illusion of being desired? The truth stands before you like a flame. The more you chase validation, the more you shrink. The more you anchor into your essence, the more you expand. Desire may chase you, but sovereignty allows you to choose. This is why Jung spoke of individuation as a sacred task, for it is the only way to step beyond projection. Without it, we are forever actors in someone else's psychic play, repeating patterns we did not write. But with it, we become the authors of our own myth. She's become exactly that, the author, the sovereign, the one who no longer plays muse or mirror, but stands as her own archetype, the self in its fullness. His obsession now seems smaller, less threatening. What once felt like a tidal wave now looks like a restless stream. She can observe it without being pulled under, because she has grown vast enough to contain her own depths. And this is the ultimate transformation. She does not simply escape his fixation, she transcends it. What was once a battle for survival has become a lesson in selfhood. The Stoics would call this freedom to remain untouched by what lies outside your command. Epictetus taught that if you wish to be invincible, hold nothing as your own that can be taken by another. She has done exactly this. His obsession cannot take her because she does not give herself away. She is no longer flattered by his desperation, nor wounded by his withdrawal. She exists beyond the ebb and flow of his gaze. And in that existence, she discovers peace. Not the fragile peace of compliance, but the unshakable peace of knowing herself. The peace of no longer needing to prove, no longer needing to be chosen. For she has chosen herself. And that choice, repeated daily, becomes the foundation of a power that no obsession can shake. If you could see her now, you would see a woman reborn. Not because he freed her, not because he finally understood, but because she ceased to confuse his fixation with her worth. She has turned the energy of his obsession inward, transmuting it into clarity, boundaries, strength. What once threatened to consume her has become the very fire that forged her liberation. And this is the ultimate irony. He believed his obsession gave him power over her, but in truth, it gave her the opportunity to claim her power over herself. At last, the cycle comes full circle. His obsession, once a storm that threatened to drown her, now lies scattered like broken glass at her feet. What remains is not the weight of his need, but the light of her awakening. She has walked through fire and emerged, forged, untouchable, sovereign. The woman who once risked being eclipsed by another's projection now shines as her own sun. He lingers in her orbit, bewildered. His hunger, once met with silence, has turned into a mirror he cannot bear. For when obsession finds no host, it turns inward, demanding integration. He sees in her what he cannot yet claim in himself, the union of strength and softness, independence and intimacy, light and shadow. To love her now would require becoming whole, and for many men, this is the greatest terror of all. But for her, it no longer matters. She has untied her worth from his gaze, detached her soul from his desire. She has stopped asking whether he will ever see her clearly, because she sees herself. She has stopped asking whether his obsession will destroy her, because she has discovered it was never hers to carry. The battlefield is cleared, and in its place grows a quiet garden of rebirth. This garden is not built from control, but from release. It is the freedom Seneca spoke of when he said, "He who is brave is free." She's been brave enough to stand still in the face of intensity, brave enough to walk away from validation disguised as devotion, brave enough to choose herself over his chaos. And that bravery has given her the one gift obsession could never provide: peace. Can you feel it? That profound peace that comes when you are no longer defined by the eyes that watch you. That liberation that arises when you stop performing for worthiness and begin resting in it. She's entered that state. The obsession that once bound her is now a faint echo, a reminder not of what she endured, but of what she transcended. And the paradox remains. In letting go of his grip, she becomes more magnetic than ever. Not because she craves attention, but because wholeness is irresistible. True presence cannot be faked, cannot be performed, cannot be bought. It emanates from within, and it is the rarest thing in a world starved for authenticity. She is no longer the hunted, she is the chooser. This is the essence of individuation, the crown of Jung's vision. To no longer live as a fragment of another's unconscious, but to step fully into the totality of one's own being. She is not muse, not mirror, not vessel. She is herself, indivisible and whole. She embodies what Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations. Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look. She has looked and she has found it. So the story ends where it was always meant to. Not with him, but with her. Not with obsession burning eternal, but with sovereignty unshaken. The hunger of another does not define her. Her own self-knowing does. And from this place, she finally understands the ultimate freedom: to choose, not to chase. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.